Welcome to another episode of Hutch on Hunting. And this is Bruce Hutchin, your host. And if you're planning on hunting Colorado this year, limited draws start in April of 2024. And if you're smart, I offer a free discovery call at Hutch on Hunting to spend a few minutes with you to kind of begin your planning process. So reach out to me at hutchonhunting@gmail.com and let me know if you'd like one of those free discovery calls. Now I'm going to turn it over to Cody Ewing. I've known Cody for many, many years, and we've hunted together, we've fished together. I was even at his wedding here a couple of years back, and he's just an amazing young man. And the hunting tradition is alive and well in Cody. So, Cody, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bruce. I appreciate the opportunity to come on.
So give us a little background about Cody Ewing and hunting.
Well, I would say my dad was the first one to take my brother and I out, and I think I was probably 8 years old when we had that first opportunity. And then it was probably the next following year that it really became alive to me when we had a big bull elk come up out of the trees in front of my brother and I. And as young hunters, and my dad, who was there with us, we unfortunately didn't tag out, but it was the experience, I think, that forever marked me as wanting to chase these majestic animals.
Now, I understand as a young man, you did go to Africa on a safari with your grandfather.
I did. I went back in, oh boy, 2011, I think I went. I actually turned 18 over there. It was on my 18th birthday. I went over there.
Wow. What kind of game did you harvest?
I harvested a warthog, steinbuck, a wildebeest, and an impala.
No, was that with a bow or rifle? Or...
That was with a rifle. I had all my intentions of taking them with a bow, but during the process of getting over there, I was told last minute that they didn't have a PH who would be able to take over the bow hunting aspect and sit in blinds. So unfortunately, I didn't take my bow, but I have every intention of going back and harvesting with the bow.
I was waiting for that. That's for sure. I was definitely waiting for that. And I've never been to Africa, and so I've talked to a couple of different people. Actually, Amanda Lynn from Just Hunt Canada was on, and she has a concession that she goes to all the time. She has a camp in the concession, so she takes people over there quite a bit, and it's all bow hunting. And then the other
That'd be amazing.
Yeah, the other gentleman that's been over a number of times is Joe Byers, the editor of bowhunting.net. And he, basically said, Bruce, if you ever want to go, I've got it lined out. So I've just got to carve out the cash.
Yeah.
I got the time. It's just carving out the cash and making the commitment, to be gone from Kathy for the extended period of time, which is probably the biggest challenge.
Absolutely.
But this show isn't about Africa. We can visit another time about Africa and your hunt over there. But we want to talk about hunting with grizzly bears and wolves, because I know right from Alta, Utah, that within minutes you could be into either grizzlies or wolves, and you have competition in the woods.
I do, yes. Yeah, right on the border here of Idaho and Wyoming, where I live, is a very unique spot. It's a place I've never hunted before, and especially coming from Colorado, where I grew up, and then after college moving up here, is one of those unique areas, because I think, everyone always hears about the bears and the wolves and all the predators up here. And to say, I'll knock on wood, I've I have personally never had any grizzly encounters yet. I know it's only a matter of time where I live. Because just north of me is where they dump all of the problem bears out of Jackson and Yellowstone National Park. So I know they're here. I run across sign almost daily when I'm out in the woods up here, and so again, it's just another challenge I think to overcome. At least where I live and where I hunt elk, there's two main herds that I do have the opportunity to hunt from, and I'm very grateful for that. But also saying that there's three established packs. Uh, One is literally 2 miles as a crow flies north from me is where they run. And then another one is about 4 miles south. And those are the two big ones that were established. And that was, I think they were established late, late in the 90s, so like 98, 99. And so there is that challenge there to it. And when they get moving, they're quickly they push out the herds real fast.
Now,
And
how
it
big
takes
of a
some
herd
time.
are we talking about? Of not the packs, but how big a herd of elk do you have the opportunity to hunt every
The,
fall?
the one north of me ranges from about 50 or 60, and the one south is sometimes around 80 heading in there. And so the only times I've ever seen them actually merge into something bigger is after the season, once snow flies and they move down into the valley. And so, um, up here with the snowfall we get and averaging about 500 inches of snow, depending on the year, it pushes the animals out fast from the high country. And so, and by then seasons are all closed down, and especially this year, we're expecting to have shorter seasons after last year's winter and the amount of winter kill, not on top of the depredation of from predators as well.
So, what do the people in the area, the locals who hunt, think of the impact of both the wolves and the grizzlies have been on the local herds there?
Well, you have a very divided opinion on that. The the true locals in the area, the born and raised, uh, aren't very fond of them, and especially because I don't know how controversial you probably want to get, but Idaho doesn't do the best on their, at least on this side. I won't speak for the whole state, but managing the winter herds of elk and deer. Because since we're in a huge migratory path here, everything from the high country just moves west and south from here. And so a lot of the farmers and ranchers uh, have kind of taken means into their own hands because um, there's just they're either not getting compensated a whole lot for the animals coming in and destroying their haystacks. Uh, and the one reason that you'll hear, since it isn't obviously a big a good opinion to have, is they say we never had this problem when the wolves were here because the animals could stay up higher and wouldn't get pushed down as low. And
Oh,
so due to
interesting.
that,
Interesting.
the I won't say the winter range has expanded, but where the elk and deer used to winter has pushed further out into a lot more of the ag fields. Now, there is an argument to be had that people are just pushing further and further up into the environment that they live in, which definitely is an argument for that. But also, again, there's the amount of predators and I would say on this side, and what Idaho does a great job on is the management of the wolves here. Again, it can be a controversial topic on that, however you want to look at it. Uh, I have some good friends who they do well in trapping and hunting every year for wolves in this area, and so they're on the Idaho side. Um, and so they're able to harvest more of them than we are up here in Wyoming.
Now, I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, that in Idaho, the season's open year round and there's no bag limit. There's no limit the number of wolves you can take. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, in the unit here where I am in Wyoming, wolves are seen as a trophy animal. So you get depending on the population of the year, when the biologists say we have this many or however many they deem is the large amount, you're able to at least get 2 tags in the trophy area here. And Idaho, I was reading an article on it, has just opened, yeah, an all-round season and put bounties on them again.
Okay.
And I believe that comes from the research that they've been doing in uh, the salmon range in Idaho over there, where their elk populations have just taken such a huge hit.
Yeah, they've been decimated. It's not a
Yeah,
hit. They've been
yeah,
decimated. And it's something that Colorado's going to have to be faced with. And another thing is there's a proposition going up to the voters again to let the voters be game managers, which is completely crazy here in Colorado with no scientific basis against cougars and bobcats and lynx. Now, lynx is interesting that they put that on there. Whoever they is, the
yeah.
anti-hunters, the liberals, they put because I don't know, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, hutchonhunting@gmail.com. Send me a note. I don't believe there's any lynx in Colorado. So why that is even part of the proposition? I don't know. Yes, there's approximately 5,000, depends who you ask, 5,000 cougars. So there's probably more. Bobcats, untold numbers. And they prey. They prey cougars, mountain lions, prey on deer for the most part. Yes, they'll take elk, especially herd elk or young elk. Bobcats are mostly, small game. And yeah, they come across a deer or an elk that's floundering. Yeah, they're a predator and they'll take it. So now what's happening in Colorado is we have the introduction of wolves costing millions of dollars. And now the voters are also going to have the opportunity to say no more hunting of cats. So now we have wolves
Wow.
and cougars, apex predators, and this is going to be decided by the people who have no flipping idea how to manage deer, elk, moose. And it's just appalling that the DNR, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, spent millions of dollars reintroducing moose to Colorado. And we have a good moose herd now. But guess what? Wolves love to eat
Moose.
moose. I mean, because they're easy prey, easier than elk.
Oh yeah, especially when they get trapped down in draws or
Yeah, they're trapped
canyons.
by the snow
Yep.
and they're in the willows, they're in the creek bottoms, river bottoms where willows are. So it doesn't take long before, a pack can take down a moose and have 3, 4, 5, 600 pounds of meat to eat. And that's what they're built to do, folks. You might say, well, Bruce, what are you going against wolves? Absolutely nothing. I've been fortunate to be up in BC, fortunate enough to harvest wolves. But in BC, they decimated the mule deer herds along the Fraser River and caribou and moose. they haven't been friendly to the environment. So we need balance, folks. They need to be scientifically, quote unquote, scientifically managed. And it seems there's people in our world today, and I won't get political on any other area, but the management of our species. Because in the Bible, it says in Genesis, we will have dominion. That means we're in control, in charge of managing everything that happens on planet Earth. And we're failing, folks, period. I know Hutch on Hunting's a hunting show, or you thought you were going to a hunting show, but you're going to get a dose of reality because our planet, our country is hurting for a lot of different reasons. But if we go back and just use common sense, which is highly uncommon now, we would be able to figure out, work together for the betterment of the species. And I'd love to have wolves in Colorado. I'm not against having wolves, just manage them efficiently and effectively. And if you don't, it all gets out of balance, and somebody's dog is going to get eaten within 5 years when they're hiking up in the high country. The dog's going to get eaten or worse. And don't tell me that it won't happen, because I've been surrounded by 7 wolves. I've been 9 feet from a grizzly bear. It's their territory, and I have to respect that. So confrontations will happen, guaranteed. There isn't maybe, or that doesn't happen, or we don't have records on that. It will happen. And I've told people continually that in a decade, hunting as we know in Colorado will not exist. Your thoughts, Cody? As I went on that rant?
Yeah. I don't think it's misplaced at all to say any of that. Um, and I like hear several stories just from this area. And this just isn't up here in Wyoming, but it's in the Teton Valley and all around. A friend of mine's son, and this was 3-4 years ago, was up bow hunting the backcountry and was actually treed by a pack of wolves, and didn't have a sidearm on him or anything, just had his bow, and he was treed for several hours. And so I think it's a misnomer to say, wolves won't attack humans or won't prey upon them. It's in their nature, it's in their blood. And again, another friend's son, he was out and he had a sidearm, but he had 3 wolves encircle him. And it wasn't until he fired his sidearm, not at them or anything like that, but just general direction, is when they started thinking again, but they didn't back down. And this was I think 3-4 years ago as well, down in between Driggs and Victor, Idaho here. A juvenile pack of wolves had been terrorizing these people's goat farm. So they do goat milk, cheese, soap, things like that people make with it. And they were just complaining that, some of their goats were disappearing. And since they lived in Idaho, they had to call Idaho Fish and Game for it. And it started this little dispute because the wolves were coming out from Wyoming in the hills and traveling down into the valley, killing at night. Weren't eating, but just killing because it's juvenile pack. And then in the mid-morning going back up. And so it went on for a couple months. And then it was one morning they came out and it was 24 dead goats in their pasture. And they obviously wanted to be paid out, obviously, for the wolves killing their herd, and Idaho wouldn't pay them because the wolves were coming out of Wyoming, and Wyoming wouldn't pay them because they were in Idaho. And so I don't know exactly how that eventually sorted itself out. Um, but I imagine since wolves have unfortunately become an animal of politics, um, it's just there's really no win-win, unfortunately, because it's no fault of their own. I think it's just people in places of power who don't live in this area, probably wouldn't find themselves in this area, who want to make policies and decisions for animals. And to touch on what you're saying in Colorado about not being able to hunt cats. I remember when I guided in Colorado and worked for Horn Fork Guides over in Buena Vista. I know that's a big cat area. And um, on one occasion, I was actually tracked out of the woods at night by a cat. And that was Colorado. And then I moved up here after college. And this was 3 years ago. I had a female mountain lion who had a den nearby, who over the course of the winter killed, I found at least 24 kill sites of mule deer in the creek bottom. And so, I mean, if we play those numbers out, there's, like I said, that was over the course of the winter, so from February to March. And I mean, that's more deer than I'll kill in probably 24 years.
True.
If you look at it like that. And I mean, and they're born and built for that. And I'd heard another story. Again, someone can correct me if I'm wrong through hutchonhunting@gmail.com. But they were saying that um, these wolf packs will follow big toms in the high country, and they've learned that they're more of effective killers than wolves are, at least the stalking game and getting close to deer. And they've started taking kills off of big cats. So I think you can probably say a cat will eat, if there's no pressure on them, a mule deer every 2 weeks, maybe. And so, I mean, that's a pretty generous number, I think. Maybe it's less, maybe it's more. But anyways, these wolves were starting to follow this big tom around, and so he would kill 2 or 3 additional deer to get the wolves off his back so he could have a meal in peace. And so and you hear stories like that, whether it's correct or not, I don't know. It's hearsay at this point. I don't think it's far-fetched. And so, in Colorado, with the reintroduction of wolves, and I was talking to a buddy about this probably 2 years ago. And I was like, man, anything you can do to vote no on that and get as many people to vote no on that, because I think a lot of people are very short-sighted and don't look back at history for what's happened. But Wyoming and Montana suffered greatly in their hunting industry as a source of revenue and income when wolves were reintroduced. And this, I'm sure the people on this podcast and who will be listening to it understand and see to a degree as well, that it's just a large level of poor mismanagement, and something does need to be done. But I don't think there's particularly a good answer for it, because within that means populations have to be managed and managed properly. And I think it's a personal opinion that I hold, and a belief as well, that if I'm out there uh, hunting and harvesting an animal, Lord willing, then by being a conservationist and a sportsman, if I truly believe that's what I am, then it's also my responsibility to harvest an animal that I might not be targeting or wanting to target. So that falls into the category of bears, of wolves, of cats. I mean, even coyotes for that matter, because they do a number on whitetail fawns and mule deer fawns every year. And I could probably add as well that in I'll give away my location by saying this, but if anyone wants to come and hunt bears, hit me up. We have too many of them here. Black bears, at least. We're still waiting for them to delist the grizz up here, but we have, and this was the last count on population of black bears in my area, and this there were more black bears per capita than in the East Coast or something like that. I mean, my numbers might be off, but they're saying for every person that's hiking, there's at least 5 bears, black bears, not grizzlies. And so there's just not, I'd say it's a game rich environment for them, in the sense as well as there's a lot of grazing that can be done after they come out of hibernation, because it's so wet here that their populations boom. And last year, I mean, it was a really cool opportunity to see it. I was able to place a trail camera on a bear den that I had stumbled across, and caught them going in for hibernation and caught them coming out of hibernation.
That's
And
cool.
yeah, it was a very cool experience to going in there. And my buddy and I, we actually went in the den this past summer to go and look around. And so, I mean, it was really cool to see that. And that same bear has come back with, she was without a cub this year. She had her cub from last year with her going and hibernate. So, I mean, she'll be coming out with cubs. I'm positive of it this year. And saying that, I mean, the side of black bears, I think this year, and unfortunately, I didn't have a lot of time to hunt or get out in the high country, but I saw probably three bears per day that I was going out. And I wasn't going out in the same areas either. And so, I mean, 15 bears in the course of a week, if that comes out right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, I look at it as living in God's creation and everything out here. I don't hold any malice towards one animal or another. And I count myself fortunate and lucky and blessed when I'm able to see a wolf out in the environment, when I'm able to see a grizz at a distance and not have an encounter with it, and just see all these animals out and about. And something I think Wyoming does a pretty good job on in their management side is taking consideration of the hunters in the field every year after they do a survey. And that's one thing I always will express to people coming and hunting Wyoming is, please give the survey at the end. And they do a really good job of listening to that. And like this year, from the surveys that went in, I wouldn't be surprised if they limit out the amount of mule deer tags that people will be able to grab. Mule deer, well, I would say all the species that are hunted. So it might be a very good year to come up and predator hunt Wyoming. Unfortunately, I don't have many outfitters that I can plug in here for wolf and bear hunts and cat hunts, but I'd say look and and come up here and do that. If you don't draw your deer, elk, or antelope tag, and that, as well as just, I think Wyoming does a very good job at managing. I think there's people who would disagree, and yes, it could always be done better. But as a whole, I would still like to stay positive about it and say they're doing a better job, because I think we've seen what the wolves will do in a long-term case study. And so from that, I feel like they're doing a good job. I think Idaho does a good job for what they do, as well as Montana. I'm still very shocked at Colorado, knowing that a huge portion of the state's income is through sportsmen. That's just very shocking to me. And on that note, I'll turn it back over to you and stop rambling.
Thanks, Cody. That's great insight and great information coming from somebody that's hunted a lot, had a lot of experiences, and loves the wild country. There's no question about it. I'll give a shout out for Dan Gates, SaveTheHuntColorado.com. And if you're not familiar with it, plug it in Google, SaveTheHunt.com. And he is heading up the fight to defeat the Proposition 101 that is going to make quote unquote trophy hunting of cats illegal in Colorado. And if that passes, folks, forget the decades. I can't stay here or stand here or speak here the year. So if it passes in 2024, I don't know if it become law in 2025. Go to SaveTheHuntColorado.com and get all the details. I do know just last week, Colorado put up an FAQ to the issue on cats and the hunting of cats. And one thing the liberals did, the people who don't want to see hunting in Colorado, it's not about the animals, folks. It's about our right to hunt in Colorado. Right now, it's a privilege. And Rick Taggart, he's in the Congress of the state. He and I have been talking, and we've been trying to get a right to hunt and fish in Colorado bill passed or proposition passed for over 500,000 people, 300,000 fishermen licenses. Okay, 300,000 licenses were sold, and 250,000 tags, big game tags were sold. That's 500,000 hunters. So getting back to Cody's point, if all 500,000 people just touched one person other than themselves, that's 1,000,000 votes. Well, 1,000,000 votes would defeat this proposition. Again, I'm no expert in elections, but reach out to SaveTheHuntColorado.com, talk to Dan Gates, and figure out how we, the hunters and fishermen and non-residents, you're impacted also, because your ability to come and hunt Colorado for elk and deer and moose, it's going to be minimized. There's no question about it. They're going to eradicate the White River herd, which is one of the biggest herds in the state. It's going to be eradicated. Up in Grand Mesa, the largest moose herd in the state is going to be diminished. So that's our political stance for this edition of Hutch on Hunting. Now I'm going to flip it over to the exciting part about Cody's techniques, use of, I'm going to give a plug to Conquest Scents, the elk scent that they produce. And I introduced Cody to that for a couple of years ago. So how'd that work out, Cody?
I have to say I absolutely love it. I'm not one to particularly say one's better than the other, but I would say in this in this circumstance, like getting off work or something like that, if I'm in camo or not, I'll throw that scent on. And um, I've, especially with wind and the thermals, and hunting the high country that we always have to take into consideration. I've been able to get on animals quite a bit and just having um, a cover scent. And I believe the one is what do they call it, Evercalm, or
Yeah, and that's elk. It's elk. Um, the elk Evercom.
yeah, elk Evercalm, and it does. I think it does wonders. And I came off of work one day and I hit the hills as fast as I could to be up there before last light, and just had that, and so I was sweaty from my work day, and it's nice because it comes in like that deodorant stick you can just rub on, and uh, I was able to get into some elk, and they're just cows and calves, but had that on and the wind was swirling, and I was right in there with them at about 20-30 yards and weren't the wiser for it. And it was great experience. And I think as someone who, yes, harvesting is the goal of an animal every year, but having unique experiences with wildlife in the backcountry is ultimately why I do it and why I love it. And to just be that much closer to the animals that I love to see and to have those experiences with is all worth it. And so Evercalm is Conquest Sense is I think is where it's at.
And I'm sure Doug and Karen will thank you for that shout out, that plug. So let's talk about your technique, whether archery hunting or rifle hunting.
So up here, when I'm fortunate, work allows, and when I can, I like to hunt from end of August is when the archery season opens up, is like the 30th, first, somewhere in there. 30th of August, 1st September. And I like to try to hunt until end of October. Because Wyoming has differences in how each unit is set up for archery, and then each unit set up for rifle, and sometimes they'll overlap and then just carry over. And so where I'm at currently, and thankfully since I've been here for some years, I know where most of the herds are going to start to herd up, especially when those bulls start coming and rutting. So there's a few areas I know, and I'd say a lot of it comes down to scouting, preseason scouting, just in seeing where they're at. And here, where we do have a lot of water every year, dry years, you can kind of bet when you can find a source of water, they're going to be there, but you can't really rely on it as much because there's a lot in the area. So that's one thing, is water holes. And since a lot of the area here is real thick timber, even carrying over into rifle season, I hunt it pretty much the same way. And that is, I have only one tree stand that I use pretty much for deer. Sometimes you'll see an elk come through. But and I'm sure most of your listeners know, elk aren't shy of moving miles during the night if they need to move to feed or water. And so knowing them and patterning them, I think, which comes into obviously ultimately patterning whitetail. I think from hunting whitetail, it's made me probably a better elk hunter, just in seeing and focusing on like their patterns and where they're going to go. And yeah, scouting if you can from a distance, I've always found is really great through spotting scope or binoculars. So I would say those are probably my main methods there. And talking to anyone who'll share information of the hunt in the area.
Local knowledge is a good thing.
It
So
is.
when you started to hunt whitetails, I know we had a number of conversations, and this is going to be a plug for why people should reach out to Hutch on Hunting and use my knowledge, use my wisdom. And so share a story about how our conversations helped you get your first whitetail up there in Wyoming.
Yeah. I've from that experience, I've definitely have. I'm actually looking at my 2 bucks that I harvested back to back from that knowledge on hanging on my wall, and uh, I've come since I didn't grow up hunting whitetail by any means. Um, they've become I've become very fond of hunting them, and I won't say one animal's over another. They're just hunted differently, and I enjoy the different challenges that each one brings to the table. Um, but this one buck in particular, I in my early years of hunting whitetail is when I was on the phone with you. I feel like every other day. Um, thought I had him patterned the first year, and that didn't work out. And I had him on camera for 4 consecutive years, and each year, I kept seeing him get bigger and bigger, which was a very cool experience to see. Um, and I did have access to private property where I knew he came through. Uh, but as I found out through year 2 and 3, he wasn't quite where I thought he would be. And since he was a larger dominant buck in the area, he traveled a lot, especially during the rut. And so there would definitely be weeks where I wouldn't have him on camera. And through talking with you, I started realizing that our buck to doe ratio was off. And so um, that was kind of learning and seeing how that worked out through like that 4 years of hunting him. And so it was finally the third year, I should say the end of the third year, sheds. And I was able to find them sometimes, which was kind of cue me in on where he was hanging out actually, which was in the creek bottom, about 1.5 miles off the property from which I had access on. And when I finally got clued into that, is what ultimately led to the success of harvesting him. And that being said, he was probably a 5.5-year-old deer, and who was very wise, very intelligent. And it was one evening, it was getting pretty late, and I ended up getting him just into shooting light. Um, and thankfully, I say thankfully because archery and rifle were kind of both in the same. So it was rifle season, but I could still shoot archery. Um, and I caught him coming up out of the creek bottom, and I thought, so finally, I see where you're coming out of. Because a lot of the creek bottoms where these big bucks hang down in is just nasty, thick, and trying to go in after him is almost impossible. And so he came up and came right into position, and that's where I finally got him. It was about 55-yard shot. And I saw him kick, but I thought I'd missed. And and so I couldn't wait. And my cousin and his I think his fiance at the time were out hunting with me. And I was like, I just got to go and check, just at least see if there's blood. And went out, found blood, and I thought, oh my word, I think I've done it. And he probably went, no, 25 yards and was piled up. And it was one of the best experiences, but then it all of a sudden hit me as now what? And I was able then the next week to harvest another great buck on that as well. And so that, and in the area where I'm at, there's a lot of ag fields, and so I would say again, I like the idea of getting up and to a vantage point and just glassing a lot, just getting eyes on them. And then it's looking at maps and seeing where their bedding area would be and where their transitions are and coming to and from. And that was a lot of the biggest help that helped me, because the amount of times I busted deer just being in the wrong place at the wrong time and not paying attention to any of really the thermals or where the heck they were bedding or anything like that. And once getting all of that into taking that into consideration and being able to set up properly, is what led to the success of getting whitetail.
And you turned into quite the whitetail hunter, actually. And I'm
I
proud.
am.
And I'm proud of you. And you got them on the wall.
I got them on the wall. Yeah.
And Cody's got a couple of bulls on the wall too. So
That I do. Like I said, I can't say I love hunting one more than the other. This year, if I'm fortunate to get my mule deer tag, I want to go after a mule deer because that's one species at least a decent buck that I don't have yet, that I would love to hunt a old wise gray faced mule deer.
well, where you live, I try to get up in the Alpine and hunt them early myself. If I was going to do it, that's when I would do it, because catch them, scout them in the bachelor groups up high when they're still in the velvet, and then find the one you want and then hunt them.
Yep.
But, living where you live and the altitude and, the challenge of that, it's going to be tough. There's no question about it. But with good glass, I mean, you can glass a mile and a half, and you can pick out, a bachelor group. And that's the way I would do it. And I'd love to go on that hunt with you, but that isn't in the cards anymore.
We'll
That's
see if
not
I
going to
can't get
happen.
any horses.
Yeah, if we had horses, I could do it. That's for sure. But any we've covered a lot, Cody. And any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I think I say it with reservation and hesitation, um, because I want hunting to, I think, remain what it is, but also be better in quality of game and access uh, to BLM or national forest. Uh, and so I know it's like a double-edged sword, right? Is invite people to, um, I don't say a hobby, but a lifestyle that we all enjoy. And yet knowing that that's going to be another person you're bringing in that might be competition. Um, which I say I don't like to think of it that way, because I think when we look at it more as like a way of life or a brotherhood, and for the female hunters out there, sisterhood of being in the outdoors is the way that it moves forward in the future. And I know we could talk more on people buying up big chunks of land and turning them into habitat for things like that, where it ultimately becomes a rich man's sport. I think the more people that we have, I don't want to say hunting, but having a respect for it, is where, like proposition, is it 101 that you were talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. Eventually those won't be passed, because people will, hopefully see that there's there's a way of life that's living closer to the land that they view what ethical hunting, and even then I hate to say ethical hunting because I feel like everyone should just have that as a frame of reference when they go into the woods and hunt. Um, but ethical hunting is and can be, and it is for the betterment of population control of animals, harvesting, and overall being able to see more animals out and about when it's done well. So I'd say that's probably my closing thought is bringing people in. And I think a lot of hunters could probably do a better job of sharing what and why they love hunting, and it not being around just killing an animal to kill an animal, but the lifestyle around it and why we all enjoy it. And so those are probably my closing thoughts.
Well said. I'm going to give a shout out for Dan Gates and SaveTheHuntColorado.com. If you're a hunter and have ever bought a fishing license, hunting license in Colorado, you need to go to that site, give them $5, give them whatever you can afford, or give them your support. You know, money is one thing, but social media has more power than your money. So we need you, because if that proposition passes by the people on the front range, which they, by just a few points, beat out the rest of the state, to allow wolves to be reintroduced, to spend millions of dollars, not thousands of dollars, but millions of dollars of yours and my money, because that's where it comes from, folks. CPW is funded by license tags, not by park memberships or park receipts, but fishing and hunting revenue is generated by fishing and hunting. So why would you even consider letting somebody that has no skin in the game other than they don't want you hunting and fishing, period? Think about that. Comments to hutchonhunting@gmail.com. Join me at hutchonhunting.com and become a member of the fastest growing research platform, digital scouting, in the state of Colorado at hutchonhunting.com. So this is Bruce Hutchin. I look forward to speaking with all of you again. And my show's coming up every week. So, and I've got almost 20 people lined up. So I got 20 weeks already. It's not even whatever date it is, January 27th. And, you know, I should hit, realistically, I'm going for 100,000 downloads this year. And I've done that before with another podcast, had to do with whitetails. And I hit 100,000 each year with that. So when I stopped, I had over 500,000 downloads. So if you're a manufacturer, a guide, or in the outdoor industry, reach out to me at hutchonhunting.com and say, hey, Bruce, let's talk. I'd like to be part of your platform as a sponsor, as a supporter, as somebody that's going to be an influencer for you. You know, reach out to me at hutchonhunting@gmail.com. And with that, God bless you all, and we'll talk to you real soon.